I'll give you examples of things that are born in the labs and then make their way over time into products. So an example of something that's been falling into product over the last 2 years is a complete revamp of our advertising system. You may think, well, why would you revamp an advertising system that seems to be serving billions of ads every day? Right? So I'll give you a small example of how this is far from a perfect science as yet. Okay? And I'll make an analogy to something you may be familiar with. When you get on an airplane and sit down, the person in the next seat probably paid a very different price for that same flight than you did. Okay? This is something that got mastered in the aviation industry in the last 30 years called yield management, where computers are constantly looking at the forecasted demand for that flight and how close you are to the flight date and adjusting the price near real time, right? So in other words, the price of a ticket isn't set in concrete. It's fluctuating based on inventory and forecasting. Okay. Now, in the advertising industry, we have kind of the same problem, but it's more complicated for a few reasons, right? Whereas a plane has a fixed size of 400 seats or something, in our world, the plane size keeps varying. So what do I mean by that? You have two things you cannot dependably forecast. So first, you don't know how many users will arrive on Christmas Day from New York City, right? So that's something that fluctuates, so you try and forecast that. That's uncertain. The second uncertainty is between now and Christmas Day, you don't know how many advertisers will show up. Okay? So on both sides you have uncertainty. In the face of this uncertainty, we have to manage supply and demand by adjusting prices. Okay. This is a very sophisticated piece of science that we have refined over the last 2 years, and now it's falling into place in our ad servers. Okay. This is not something that is a matter of coding from a textbook, right? It really required new science. So that's an example of deep econometrics that have made their way into a completely new ad server. Now, once you have the mathematics and the econometrics figured out, still turning it into a software artifact is non-trivial scientifically. So that's a journey that takes a couple of years. So that's one example. Let me give you a completely different example that is also of advertiser interest. What advertisers care about is the effect of their advertising on the consumer. Okay. So here's a study with a leading retailer in the United States that I cannot name, that involved about 3 million users. And the idea was to expose a sample population to advertisements from the retailer and examine the lift in sales from the people who are exposed to advertising. Okay? So there's a control group who are not shown the advertising and a treatment group who are showing varying dosages of advertisement. And then you want to see what was the effect on the lift in sales from these people. Okay, so maybe they used to spend $10 a week before seeing the advertising. And if they spent $14 after, then we would say there was a lift in sales of $4. Okay. So this is the control treatment and effect that we're studying. So the findings were remarkably interesting because they were done at scale. They're statistically significant. So first, for every dollar spent on display advertising at Yahoo, there was a lift in sales at the retailer of roughly $10. Okay, so tenfold return on investment in terms of sales lift. Okay, not sales, but sales lift. Okay, this was done at a massive randomized scale, so you don't have spurious effects like it was a holiday and it was a weekend and all of this stuff. Second, and you would find this perhaps even more remarkable, is 93% of the lift in sales occurred in physical stores. So it's not the case that people saw the ad online and spent online. They saw the ad online and spent offline. Okay, very surprising. And then the most recent finding, which we released last week in this sequence of studies, was that the lift in sales was especially pronounced by a further factor of 4 for people who lived within 2 miles of a store. So if you're the retailer and you have a store here, the people around you within 2 mile radius are your choicest targets for advertising. And what we can do is deliver those targets to you. So they're a premium that you would love to target because they give you such a huge lift in sales. That's an instance of a study in the labs that is now making its way into a locally targeted advertising product.